All right, welcome back, everyone, to week 3 of the Wrestling Rewatchables. We're here with WrestlingInc President Raj Giri, and also here with Sports Illustrated's Justin Barrasso. How you guys doing?
I laughed because before we went on the air, Jesse's like, "Let me double check your last name."
I know. I said I'm not going to mispronounce it. Don't worry, I said it, and then I'll get it next time. Sorry.
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Long week in the wrestling world covering. I know everyone who loves wrestling felt it. Even we didn't talk about this before we went on the air. Larry Sonka, what a devastating. Mm-hmm. His stuff was just like it was a staple after a show. You knew he was writing. Just a tough week in the wrestling world.
Yeah, him and the Shad, Shad Gaspard incident. That was like just like scrolling on Twitter Monday morning. It was like back to back. I was like, wait, how can both of these things be happening at once? But man, what a rough day.
It was a rough day. And then people that watched the Owen Hart episode, that probably didn't get your spirits up. It was really sad. But let's try to have some fun today.
Yep. And, hopefully to get everyone's spirits up, we got a great show. This is the third Saturday Night's Main Event we're watching. This took place on May 2nd, 1987. It was taped on April 28th, 1987. So really basically a few days after it was taped, it aired. This was basically kind of a fallout show for WrestleMania 3. I know we're going to talk a lot about WrestleMania 3 tonight, but basically this was the first kind of major show after WrestleMania 3. So what we see is a lot of the fallout of the angles at WrestleMania 3. There's a lot of Hogan and Andre. There's a lot of Savage and Steamboat. There's the Harts and the Bulldogs have another match. So there's a lot of stuff going on after WrestleMania 3. Real quick before we kind of get started, what are you guys kind of like memories of WrestleMania 3?
For me, the most iconic memory is still Hogan and Andre and their stare down at that beginning of that match. Hogan shaking, going for the slam fall. Just that visual, I'll never forget it. To me, that is WrestleMania. That larger than life stars, that atmosphere, and that drama. So I thought, in many ways, it's my favorite WrestleMania of all time.
I think the card's electric, but to me, wrestling is the story of what comes next. And Jesse, that's a good question too, because how do you get any bigger than Hogan Andre? Mm-hmm. Well, on the next Saturday Night's Main Event, you have Bobby say there's a huge reveal why Andre should be champion. He's still undefeated. So kind of classic pro wrestling. And to me, I mean, having the benefit of hindsight, like it's one of the greatest stories of all time. Bobby and Hulk, right? Even when Bobby finally gets Flair to win the belt and he wins the Rumble instead of Hogan, even years later in WCW. Even though Heenan's a villain on commentary and Hogan runs the NWO, Bobby doesn't like him. He says, I've been telling you all along about this guy. He's a fake. He's a phony. It's just such the Heenan-Hogan story for parts of 2 decades was just incredible.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that when Hogan eventually does lose the title, it's because DiBiase is working with Andre, and Heenan is kind of not in that role. And in hindsight, it's a little disappointing that Heenan, his entire mission for years was to try to wrest the title away from Hogan. And he tried with a bunch of different guys and a bunch of different ideas, and unfortunately, he never really got his day in the sun.
I thought of Vince right away when I saw. I'm sorry, Chip and Raj. Bobby starts the show with the neck brace. When Vince goes on trial, he has the neck brace. It's like it's the classic bad guy. Put him in a neck brace. Probably. And when you see Bobby open the show or close to open, I don't think he's the first interview, but he's got the neck brace on. It's going to be good.
I wonder if Vince borrowed it from Bobby. If they had that one, that's the one that they use that they circulate
Same
around.
Prop? Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Let's paint the picture here a little bit about what's going on here in May of 1987. Top of the box office. So in May, was Secret of My Success was the #1 movie for 5 weeks in a row. I don't remember it being that big, but
wow.
I mean, Michael J. Fox is riding high at that point, but yeah.
He was a megastar for basically until after this movie, and then it kind of went downhill a little bit before he came back in TV. And then Ishtar, which was a giant flop, but it was #1 for a weekend before Beverly Hills Cop 2 came out during Memorial Day weekend. I love that one. Beverly Hills Cop 1 still one of my favorites, but 2 was still a solid.
Well, if Michael J. Fox on top of the world, Eddie Murphy was as well, right during that period. Oh, yeah. That was when he was probably the most famous. He's probably the most famous comedian in the world at that time.
Yeah, Michael J. Fox, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Eddie Murphy.
You name them. That's
yeah.
All right, so we're gonna get started here. If you want to pull up your broadcast of the show on the WWE Network, because I'm assuming most people are watching this. Unless you have these old did these come out on VHS tapes?
I don't think so, no. I mean, they have like best of Saturday Night's main events, or they'd have like Hulkamania, and there'd be some of these matches on there. I think that's where I saw Hogan versus Orndorff for the first time, was that.
Okay, so so everyone's on the WWE Network, presumably.
Jesse, a little too young for this, but it's hard to capture the excitement. I suppose it's like walking into a toy store. Do those even exist anymore? But when you were a kid and you walked through the video store and you got to the wrestling section and you looked at the back of those covers, Raj, it was electric. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but it was a big deal.
So WrestleMania 3 was my first WrestleMania that I watched in any form, and it was months after. And I had heard about it. I was starting to get interested in wrestling, and then I was like, Hogan and Andre wrestled? Oh my God, I got to get that. So my video store, it was never there. And I'm talking for months and months and months. So I put my name on a wait list. I was like number 40 or something like that. And people were checking it out for weeks. It would just drove me nuts. It took months for me to finally get that videotape. And when I got it, it was like, yes, I'm going to watch this over and over.
It sounds like it was like 100 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. That's how you.
Well, I'm still, when I was a teenager, Blockbuster had kind of been phased out. But as a kid, I still went to Blockbuster and still went to the wrestling section. I know this will really date me. WrestleMania 19 was one of the ones I always got. I probably got it like 5 times from Blockbuster. My parents would be like, that again? I'm like, oh, but it's got Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle, and Brock Lesnar tries the shooting star press and he lands on his head. And, I remember they had the WWE, like history of the WWE Championship DVD, and it came out in like 2006 maybe. And it had like a lot of the matches from like the Bruno Sammartino era and then a lot of the Hogan era. And that kind of was really what I would say sparked my interest in wrestling before like what was currently happening, kind of going back and watching that kind of stuff. So,
yeah. Real quick, did we say which Saturday Night's main event we're doing?
Yeah.
May 2nd, 1987.
Yeah. This is May 2nd, 1987 from Notre Dame, Indiana. Attendance of 9,345, which sounds like it would probably be pretty legit. I don't know how big that building is, but that's a pretty small
during
number.
This time they were on fire.
But usually they would be like, there's 8, like we talked about in the first one, like the Hartford Civic Center, there's 20,000 people there. And this seems like
at least on this one too. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. At least that's the number that I found online. So we're going to hit play and then we're going to hit pause right as immediately after, just to make sure we're all on the same track. And some people have commercials, people get the network differently. So on 3, 2, 1, press play, press pause, and we'll give it another 15 seconds. This show did a 9.5 in the ratings. That's down from the previous show, which was 11.5. But you have to think, the other one was leading up to WrestleMania 3. Hogan and Andre were in the Battle Royal. This show doesn't quite have that kind of card. Hogan is not on the card. He does appear a lot in promos. But having watched this earlier this week, I actually think this is maybe the best top to bottom show. There's a lot of different stuff going on. There's a lot of Randy Savage on this. There's a lot of you get the Hart Foundation versus the British Bulldogs in a 2 out of 3 falls match. It kicks off with Kamala versus Jake Roberts. So there's a lot of good stuff on this show, despite them not having maybe that one giant match.
Jesse, feels like a modern show, doesn't it?
This feels like a more modern show, and it still has some of the charm of the 80s, but you can also see there's a Ricky Steamboat match. There's obviously the Hart Foundation match. There's a more athletic working style, which kind of made me like the show. It's different than the previous shows, but it does have its own value. So we're going to hit play. I'll do another countdown here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Everyone press play.
These openings, man, I love them.
Yeah, we're gonna get the videos, like the individual little videos. Here we go.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is that we talk about the characters back then and how they did their own promos. These Saturday Night's main event were all scripted promos. These openings, all the promos in the middle, the Vince McMahon, Jesse Ventura openings, those were also scripted, and you could sometimes hear Jesse or see Jesse mouthing Vince's lines as he's saying them. So, but because these guys knew their characters, it works so well. They just take their character, take those scripted promos, and make it work as opposed to being given a character.
Liz you don't see that very often, but Liz being intimidated and scared of Randy during his promo, either for him or for his opponent. Like she knew her role. I don't know if Liz gets her credit either. But again, I'm sure Savage is still great without her. It's kind of like Paul Bearer and The Undertaker. Like, Taker's still great, but Paul Bearer was such a key part of that success. Liz was such a key part of the Macho Man.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to imagine Macho Man without Elizabeth in this era.
Absolutely.
It's weird how time went so slow. Like things changed so much year after year, back then. Like, 3 years later, Savage and Elizabeth are no longer together. And you had it, and in that time you had, they're split, the face turned, Savage became the WWF champion, and then they're no longer together just 3 years later. So it's kind of odd.
And something that's interesting about watching this show, and it's such a difference than today, is that, this is coming off of WrestleMania 3, and there's not another pay-per-view you immediately start building towards. There wouldn't be another pay-per-view until Survivor Series in 1987, and I don't know the history exactly, but they might not have even had planned Survivor Series.
No, that was a late decision because they were running Starcast. Starcade.
Starcade. Yeah, they were trying to compete with Starcade, so they kind of threw together Survivor Series. So basically what we're seeing here is almost like a build for what we're really seeing is a build for the house shows that people would go to, because the house show business was the dominant form of income for the WWF at this time. But what you end up seeing is you almost see a lot of build for WrestleMania 4, because that's all these feuds are going to keep going, and you wouldn't have the big blow off in a lot of cases until WrestleMania 4. I mean, that was when you see the Hogan versus Andre rematch, which is basically what they're building on this show.
Up until probably like 2001, maybe. The house show business was such a gigantic part of their, the substantial percentage of their revenue, their revenue and profit. It wasn't until the TV deal started getting big in, 2000, after the 2000s that they became less and less important.
Even Hogan Earthquake, I remember that did that's a big feud that didn't end on pay-per-view. That ended at house shows.
Which one was that?
Hogan Quake, Earthquake.
Yeah. I mean, they did that SummerSlam match that didn't have a finish. It was a count out, and they never had the clean finish.
But that was almost the idea, because you would do that match at SummerSlam, and everyone would see it who got the pay-per-view, and then they would just be able to kind of do the blow-off match on each house show that they would go to, in the fall.
But usually after the house shows were done, they would do a televised. Usually Saturday night's main event were the big matches after it was done. And
even Jake Robert Savage was a Saturday night main event blow off. Before we talk about Bobby and Ken Patera here, which is phenomenal, you want the belt, he starts whipping him. Jesse Ventura, it's funny to compare the broadcast then to now. Jesse does toe the company line and promote exactly what he's supposed to promote, but man, he does it in such a realistic fashion where you feel like he's talking to you and not working for the company. Ventura was brilliant in his role. It's just amazing how well he could, because now it seems like they're selling me something. I never felt like Jesse Ventura was a salesman.
Yeah, and the one thing with Jesse, could you imagine them giving him the 10 pages of rules of things he can't say now?
I'm sure he would toss it aside.
I'll tell you this, with Jesse, watching these shows with Jesse Ventura, the reason I think so many people have such fond memories of Jesse Ventura, not only because he's really good at his job as the heel announcer, but that he's right. In the main event, which is
he's not spewing BS. He's giving the heel side, which is. And it's like in Cobra Kai when Johnny tells his side of the feud with Machio. Well, that makes sense.
In the main event, they build up. The main event for the show is the Can-Am Connection versus Nikolai Volkov.
We should say the last match of the show.
Yeah, it's not really, but
yeah.
the point is Hacksaw Jim Duggan basically announces that if Nikolai Volkov starts trying to sing the national anthem, I'm gonna have something to say about it because this is the USA. And Ventura's if he's defending the USA, part of his freedom is being able to sing the national anthem, and everyone's like, yeah, Jesse, you're right. But of course, Vince is trying to sell it like Duggan's the hero, which he's supposed to be in storyline. And at the time, people of course go crazy for Duggan. But in hindsight, when you're watching it, it's Jesse's right. He's making a lot of sense. He's not BSing you you would get today.
Yeah.
Also, I mean,
Michael
it's
Sachs
hard
Jr.
not
saying,
to...
"Oh, sorry."
Go ahead,
Michael Sachs Jr. saying, "First time catching you guys live. Thanks for tuning in."
And he gets to hear me wax poetic about Mr. Fuji. Another guy that doesn't particularly get a ton, maybe because, the last great moment for Fuji was Yokozuna?
Yeah.
Yeah, big moment in Yoko.
He was with Jeff Jarrett for randomly for a little bit, a couple weeks.
Fuji could do anything. He knew the business so well. He knew little ways to get guys over. even I loved it. Didn't make sense, that promo he just gave, really, about the snake in the grass and Kamala, but like I love Fuji made every guy, even like the nobodies. Not that Kamala's a nobody. I think Kamala's very agile for a guy that size and very talented.
Right.
Fuji was just so good at making guys better.
If you just noted,
they just showed a Jake the Snake promo.
Yeah,
it's pretty short. It's which is Jake is one of the best promos in the company. But Jake the Snake versus Kamala. This is such a interesting match.
Yeah, Gene.
Well, they had to make that promo short because he's sticking the snake in Gene's face and Gene cuts it off. So
yeah, it's all Gene selling, like the shaking of the microphone. He sells this like he's terrified of the snake, which most of these guys do. But it's a really good promo because it's almost like Jake doesn't even have to say anything. The entire fear is played off by Gene. It's another reason why he's so good. Gene Okerlund is really like the star of these shows.
Kamala, this gimmick would not work today.
I agree.
It's one of those, I don't even know, like if you induct him in the Hall of Fame, if you could show some of these clips.
Kamala's like one of those great kind of character guys from the 80s. He comes up, Jim Harris is his real name. He's from Mississippi. He comes up in as kind of like a preliminary wrestler. He ends up working in Memphis in 1982 where they I guess Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Lawler kind of come up with the Kamala character. And they shoot this crazy video where they introduce Kamala, which is like, I want to say it's Jerry Jarrett, but it might not be Jerry Jarrett, but they're like in like Africa, quote unquote Africa, and he's got he's hunting for big game, and he sees Kamala like in the brush, and it's something that has not aged well, to say the least. But this was Kamala had the gimmick where he went everywhere, and he'd come in for 6 months, and he'd draw, and he'd work with the top guys, and then he'd go somewhere else. And he started in Memphis, and then he went to Mid-South, and then he went to WCCW in Dallas. Then he went to the WWF. Then he went to the AWA. Then he went back to the WWF. And he had a really long career basically just doing this gimmick, which was a pretty simple, straightforward gimmick.
He's a very agile guy, too. But could you imagine this, Kamala, Jim Harris today, like just, in a singlet, working at NXT. This character makes him a star, and a presentation, and it's just one of those things. Sometimes, like the same thing as a Big Boss Man, where just that presentation can make you a superstar.
Yeah, I think Big Boss Man.
Go ahead, Jess.
I think Boss Man's gimmick could actually work. You just tweak it a little bit. The idea of like an arrogant, power hungry, law enforcement officer or security guard or whatever, it could work. It would be a little bit more political today, obviously. But you obviously couldn't do really anything like Kamala.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Justin?
I feel the same. I'm surprised they haven't done a police or corrections type character since. And I agree. I think that's Bruce's comment. Fuji, to me, with the face paint, I always associate Fuji with Demolition and the Powers of Pain.
Yeah.
I love this match in its simplicity, right? Like Jake, really simple in his moveset, but everything makes sense. Kamala, simple in his moveset, but everything makes sense. Simple, it was beauty in simplicity, and their storytelling was really strong. Though just the way they built that story in the ring. Kamala doesn't get the credit he deserves. Jake does, but two really talented guys.
Yeah, Bruce Bennon noting that Kamala was hired in WCW in '95. Refused a job to Macho Man at Halloween Havoc in '95 and was then fired.
Who are you what is Kamala thinking there?
Yeah, I know. What the? Wow.
We're gonna see Honky Tonk Man later on the show. If you want to talk about people refusing a job to people.
Yeah. But Terry Allen Jr. with a $2 super chat. Thank you, Terry. He said, "In Your House 1995, Sid wore red." We were talking about that last week, right? Like
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Not remembering.
I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah.
You guys didn't ask him about the red tights. I was disappointed.
I know. We should. Sid's intense. He can be an intense interview. Yeah. Our Kadeep asking your favorite wrestler. If you had to choose your favorite wrestler of all time, you only pick one. Who do you guys got?
Sid Justice. Red tight Sid Justice.
Red tight Sid Justice.
Red tight Sid Justice.
Jesse,
the answer
from New Japan. I'm taking it.
Actually, Raj, my favorite wrestler of all time is Toshiaki Kawada from All Japan. But
Kawada.
I don't have a real favorite. If I were to pick a WWF guy, I would probably say Bret Hart.
Yeah. Mine is still always will be Randy Savage. He's
It's a great choice.
He just reminds me what pro wrestling should be. You don't look at someone and say that guy reminds me of Randy Savage, because he was such a quick character. He's so over, so colorful. So his promos, his presentation, the music, he was just amazing.
On the same note, mine was Mr. Perfect. So the same idea, right? Very believable. He could work either side as a good guy, bad guy, face heel, whatever you want to call it.
So look at Jake's calling for the DDT right now, and you can just see how crazy the crowd goes. It kind of shows
one of the best.
This is interesting. So Kamala, there was a distraction. Jake got hit by the cane by Kimchi, and then Kamala pins Jake the Snake Roberts. If I saw this lineup, I would think Jake wins, no question.
But the great part is you needed to sell Fuji as a difference maker with Kamala. I love that Ventura earlier in this match says, "Can he really hit the DDT on Kamala?" Of course he can, but it makes you think, geez, I don't know. And I also love Jesse's going off right now on Joey. We talked about how Jesse would tease Gorilla or Gino. He's talking about how dense Joey Morella is. It's not surprising they got one past him. So good moment for Ventura to pick on a friend.
We got a cool moment coming up here. Kimchi is taking his outfit off. So Mr. Fuji, and it's the Honky Tonk Man. It was the Honky Tonk Man.
And as we saw earlier, the Honky Tonk Man had broken a guitar over Jake Roberts' back earlier.
And he beat. So we're coming off of WrestleMania 3, and he beat Jake Roberts at WrestleMania 3, even though Jake had Alice Cooper in his corner.
Real surprising.
Yeah.
Detroit native Alice Cooper.
Like you'd see the rematches at the house shows. You'd see Jake get his again, a very different business back then.
And this is really good. This is really good.
Wibbo asking my Randy Savage impersonation. I'll do it by the end of the show. I got one. I'm sure we all got one, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have one. I don't know if it's a good one.
So Honky just beating down Jake.
This is great.
How did we not have a perfect Savage feud? How did that? I guess the timing just didn't work, but would have been gold.
Yeah, they were kind of heading that way, and then Warrior left the company, and then all of a sudden Perfect and Savage were partners. Yeah, I was so bummed out when Perfect left WWF during that period. It was. I know. It was. I was really excited when he turned babyface, because they quickly turned Brett. Brett, I felt like he hadn't reached that level of star power yet, and he did. I felt like years later where he was a legit draw. But when they first turned him, he had been a mid-carder up until that point when they had him win the title. And Perfect was that kind of star that you could put at the top easily.
Right.
And like I said, this is kind of a fallout show.
That was a great primetime wrestling.
Yeah.
He says, "You want an answer? I'll give you an answer." And he pours the water on Bobby's head.
Right. Well, because earlier he was saying he wasn't going to do it, and he was laughing it off, and then the whole episode built to Perfect then accepting the challenge. It was well done for what they had. They had a week to set up that main event, because Warrior was gone just like that. He was fired.
Help me out with another good Perfect moment, another good Perfect turn on the other side of the card. Does he turn on Mark Merrow to align with Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley? But he left shortly thereafter that too.
Right. Yeah, and that was another time when I was devastated, because I thought they were leading to a Triple H Mr. Perfect feud.
Which would have been really fun.
That's when they were jobbing Triple H out all summer, and he got his first win in Intercontinental title match. Go figure, he gets an Intercontinental title shot after losing all summer. But he was aligned with Mr. Perfect there for a minute. So we got George the Animal Steele versus Macho Man coming up. What's that?
I said we're officially off track. This is a good interview too. Gene's confusing, and I think he gets scolded by Ricky Steamboat in the next segment.
Yeah.
He's like, "Why are you?"
Steamboat comes back.
Yeah.
So we got George Steele versus Randy Savage. I think it's clear at this point that the plan isn't for Randy Savage to be a babyface. The way that comes
into play. This show, if you fought Randy Savage is basically the star of this show for the amount of different stuff he does, but there's a really interesting end to the show.
Yeah. And it looks like Kimchi and Honky Tonk Man now are at ringside.
Yeah, so it's Kimchi and Honky Tonk Man. Bruce Brennan saying Kimchi was played by Steve Lombardi. I don't know if that's true.
No, that's true. Yeah, most of the time.
Oh, okay. Now actually, I was confusing. So I was confusing Steve Lombardi with Steve McMichael,
Steve McMichael.
And I was like, he's much bigger than that guy. But
yeah, Steve Lombardi, the Brooklyn Brawler, who was also MVP, this baseball player for that gimmick lasted a couple of weeks. And
the Abe Knuckleball.
He played Doink for a while.
Are you talking about Abe Knuckleball Schwartz?
Abe Knuckleball Schwartz. When he first debuted, he was called MVP.
During the baseball strike.
Yep.
Great cutting. So this is Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I like he's wearing this Harley Davidson shirt, and he's got the sweet USA bandana.
Kind of a normal body too. You know, if he's on PEDs, it doesn't look it. He's just a big dude here. He's got that football body, you know, big, tough. But
yeah, it's like
a few years later is enormous.
But it's kind of like what kind of like separated Goldberg. Like Goldberg had a great body, but it was like a different type of body than like the bodybuilder, like on the gas body. It was just like, this is a big, broad shoulder, like a thick neck guy, and it kind of made him stand
let's check
out.
This Macho Man promo real quick.
I'm the true Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion.
So awesome.
Right, Randy. Right what? Right champ. That's better, yeah.
You know, Randy Savage, I don't understand a lot of things, including why you would want to get in a lumberjack match with George Steele.
You gotta be ribbon. First he kidnaps my man.
It says ribbon. You never hear that word on TV, on wrestling.
That damn it, yeah. No escape. Vengeance is mine.
Yeah. All right, George
so
the
cool.
Animal Steele, perhaps.
He almost never looks at the camera.
Yeah,
he and Oakland were great together, but man, did Liz play a great role. She's just perfect counterpart to Macho.
Yeah, I mean, if he was with like Missy Hyatt or something like that, it wouldn't be the same, you know.
Or Jimmy Hart, who's great. I mean, this worked. I don't know if anything else would have quite like this. Just like Taker. I mean, Paul Bearer. I think it's the same idea. Like, it would have been good otherwise, but it was great with Paul Bearer.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Duggan was getting a push, and then a month later he got busted with the Sheik. That's true. He got arrested for driving. I think the Sheik had cocaine on him. And
they were.
We talked about this last week, but the big scandal in that was almost like that they found out that the Sheik and Jim Duggan were riding in the car together when they were supposed to be feuding. And I think the Sheik got released, and then Duggan was kind of taken off a TV for a while. But he would come back because he does get fired. But doesn't he win the Royal Rumble, the first Royal Rumble in 80? Is that 88 or 89?
I thought he was fired before this.
Duggan?
Yeah, wasn't he fired before this? And then he came back at WrestleMania.
I thought Duggan and Sheik were both fired, and I remember because to me it's a funny story because you know Duggan's in the kind of the Rat Pack with DiBiase and Roberts. It's the three of them, and they all have their own vices. Where am I going? So the three of them, but it's funny that Duggan's getting advice from Jake, like, "Hey man, take it easy. Vince will call you back. He'll come back. Like, don't go crazy." When you're getting advice from Jake Roberts to calm down, it's probably not a good point in your life. But I think and I think Duggan got pulled over. I think for an empty container, like he was drinking in the car.
Yeah, there were. So I got it here. It was May 26, 1987. So just a few weeks after this aired, him and Sheik were arrested for DUI. Duggan never got fired. He was on the verge of release, but he didn't get fired.
Yeah, he was taken off for like 6 months or something like that.
And he was at that Survivor Series. So he was back by November. But yeah.
So they sent him home then.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Bruce, man, he's a wealth of knowledge. Duggan came back in October to feud with Harley Race.
And thank Bruce, you. That was that's the 37th annual, right? Or 35 or 37, whatever ridiculous number they use at the Slammy Awards. I think it was like the 37th annual Slammies, and that's when he and Race brawl throughout the entire venue and it's a food fight. It's a lot of what we saw like at Money in the Bank actually this year. Vince loves that like pie in the face kind of nonsense. So
yeah. Whenever I think of the Slammies, I always think of Owen. He's the most associated with the Slammies of.
You know who I put it
most to him.
Vince is probably two a stand back, but you know who's high on my Slammy list, Raj? Is Todd Pettengill. Like I can't think of the Slammies without his musical numbers. As a kid, I loved him. I think I could still sing one right now. I'm not going to, but I think I could still sing. He would open with a musical number like. I don't know. Is it the Emmys or the Oscars? Or he was good.
Are the Slammies on the network?
I don't think
question.
so.
I don't know.
They should put that on there.
Because they used to be standalone shows, correct?
Yeah.
They weren't just part of.
Jesse, when they're trying to think of the Pettengill ones, were like the night or two before, I believe WrestleMania. so it was special to have like a Saturday night special or something. But yeah, I'm tempted to sing a little bit. I'll wait.
If someone maybe kicks forward a comment of a certain value, Justin will sing a Todd Pettengill number from the old Slammy shows.
He's got the one I'm thinking of is like it's an Owen Hart, Davey Boy Smith song. He sings this. He does a bunch of songs about them. We're at the Slammies. It beats the Grammys. We're live on USA. I wish I knew like something about science or medicine or world history, but instead I can quote the Slammies from 20 years ago.
So this is probably the most enduring feud, it seems like, in the history of Saturday Night's Main Event, because this is the third one of these we're doing, and it's the third time that they're having a match. But a key thing
this is the second time on Saturday Night's Main Event, though, right?
Is it? Did we not see?
Because the other was WrestleMania 2.
Well, we saw the first Saturday Night's Main Event. There was the Savage versus Steele match, right? And then we had the one last week with like Elizabeth is in the like lifeguard chair, and the winner gets her. And then we have this lumberjack match. Which this lumberjack match, like all good booking ideas, they use to like kind of set up a bunch of feuds that you would actually see on the rest of the show and obviously in the future. But they do a really good job kind of like giving all these guys a purpose for being out here, as opposed to just kind of having bodies, which is kind of what they do a lot now.
Jesse, a little bit like AEW with guys in the crowd, like they're still working on their storylines too. I just couldn't help but laugh. Duggan running around with that 2x4 and everybody sprinting away. It's like it's 8-on-1, but the board comes out, they run. And I know we're talking over it, but Jesse was notoriously hard, just commentary-wise, on Duggan, and he was here too about him and that stupid board. So
he scared everyone off, got kicked out, sent to the back, and you're right. I mean, Jesse's absolutely right. So absolutely justified. You know, more often than not, when him and Vince would argue, Jesse was the one that was actually right.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like
Vince
that's why we like Jesse.
Face.
Vince is kind of a bad babyface announcer because he makes you feel like you don't want to like the babyfaces. That's why we had a whole generation of people that grew up saying they like the heels.
Oh, no. Hogan was, the babyfaces in the 80s were the biggest. I mean.
No, I know. But they're talking in the 90s, though, people ended up liking the heels. And this is Jesse putting that kind of like idea in their brain when they were kids.
Jesse made it cool to be bad. Yeah, yeah. I'm laughing at Steele throwing the turnbuckle in Savage's face, but
right.
The beginning of the end for who here? For George Steele. This is in terms of a big marquee matchup. Savage. This was it, and the Bulldogs. Bulldogs don't stick around. I mean, obviously Davey has a great run later, but Dynamite's time is it's closer than the end and the beginning.
Yeah, I think they were in the next WrestleMania, and that was kind of it. Because the next WrestleMania, they had Matilda got kidnapped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they had the thing with the Islanders. But yeah, so it was.
This is unfortunately kind
Tom Zenk, a rare
Z-Man.
Yeah,
he's an action leader. We got the Can-Am Connection, not the Can-Am Express, the Can-Am Connection. Rick Martel and Tom Zenk.
This is probably their only Saturday Night's Main Event, I'm guessing.
Well, they're going to be in the closing match tonight, I believe.
Right. And in retrospect, the Bulldogs and the Hearts, and we're looking. They always wanted the Stallions or some other tag team. They tried a lot of young other teams when they had two of the best already right in front of them.
Yeah, Bulldogs and the Hearts were kind of like the Road Warriors and the Midnight Express of the WWF, as far as just a great feud that just kept coming back to them, going away, coming back, and it was always awesome.
Well, they were all the Calgary guys, and they were so used to working with each other, and they worked a certain style. I would call it now like a more modern style, but it was a kind of a style that not everyone worked in the WWF. So they almost, in some ways, the best way for them to work was to work with the people that understood that kind of style, as opposed to maybe some of the other different styles that maybe not as athletic, maybe more, sports entertainment-y.
So Steele throwing Savage outside and Savage into it with Ricky Steamboat. Mm-hmm. Now all the guys are fighting. Danny Davis from behind with the bell.
He hits him with the wrong side of the ring bell. Like he hits him like the wooden side.
No, that's the side they usually hit.
Well, I understand it's easier to hit the guy, but logically, wouldn't you want to hit him with the steel part?
With the bell. Also, that we talk about the feud outside the ring. It was Hercules and Steamboat who had the match, so that was building that too. Here's the iconic elbow drop from Macho.
And Savage pinning Steele and ending the feud for good.
See you later,
hopefully.
Yeah.
But it's a great run for George Steele. He'd already had such a big, long career. This is kind of like the last kind of run he's in, and I mean, I'm sure he made a good amount of money, and he's working 3 Saturday Night main events against Randy Savage.
So now you're seeing Steamboat in the ring attacking Savage, and then Hercules attacking Steamboat. That's the match for later tonight. And then this is the last Saturday night's main event of Savage's first heel run. After the next time we see him, he becomes a full babyface. I mean, they sprinkle the Hogan dust and turn him into the hottest babyface by the next time we see him on Saturday night's main event.
But you see, as we said, like all these guys are feuding each other. Here, Jake comes out. He's got his ribs taped because he's selling the big splash. So something about the Jake versus Kamala match is it's kind of one of these interesting things is that Jake is like a big guy. He's probably about 6'5", but he's never like kind of presented as a big guy. It's not almost like part of his gimmick. While Kamala is the Ugandan giant. He's obviously like the idea is that he's this big monster guy. But when he gets in the ring and he's shorter than Jake Roberts, it kind of creates an interesting dynamic where these guys, you almost have to have like, if you're actually big, it has to be part of your character. Otherwise, you make the guys who are supposed to be big look small. If that makes any sense.
That snake would have terrified me, by the way. But,
yeah. And now we got to sit down with Andre and Bobby the Brain Heenan. No camera tricks. And just look how big Andre looks there. He's not standing on a shoebox or anything. He just looks gigantic.
The Andre,
his hand.
It's almost like his clothes are always a size too small, too, which just makes him look even bigger.
Yeah. Andre saying he's the real champ.
Well, they're going to play off the angle.
The referee was incompetent at WrestleMania 3. I mean, it was this was one of those storylines where it made sense. The referee's
Are Bobby
hand
and
went down
Andre
3
sharing
times.
a chair?
It's like a love seat. It's probably bigger. It's probably bigger than do you think? But Andre's so big that looks like it's not big enough for 2 people. When if it was 2 normal sized people, it probably would be. But Bobby Heenan's the master of instant replay. We saw it with the Orndorff match 2 weeks ago. He's got it all queued up. And here's the famous stare down from WrestleMania 3. Andre's 7'5", but he's only a few inches taller than Hogan.
How does that work?
Yeah.
Like Andre's like 6'10", and Hogan's probably like 6'6", maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, think about it. I mean, he's, Drew McIntyre is probably a little taller than Hogan here,
Yeah, I mean, but Drew's a big guy, but that's kind of my point is that Drew's like,
that's
they don't
what I
really
mean. Like,
sell the idea
like,
that Drew's like a monster.
Hogan always seemed like such a huge guy, and I think people forget that Drew is a really big dude. He's they don't really play up his size, even though he's
that's what I mean. It's almost like if he's not like the Scottish giant or like anything like that. He's like a big guy, and they say he's big, but it's almost like deceptive, like how big he really is. Like unless you knew he was 6'5", you might not even like notice.
And it seems like in our modern era, we love to make the good guy, the baby face, he's always working from behind, which is tougher to do with a giant. When you're Drew McIntyre is a legit action figure come to life. So I see the challenge there, but that's why to me it was a missed opportunity. Like that match, it's not Hogan Andre, but Drew Big Show following Mania. Like I wish they had a whole episodic build to Big Show congratulating him, saying how proud he was of him, and being like, I want your belt, and then making that kind of a story instead of it just being a weird. Like I still think that's an odd way to start Drew as champion, saying no, I didn't want to wrestle you. I think Drew's fantastic.
It's so weird. Yeah, I agreed. Like after WrestleMania, they're just still all there. He's interviewed 20 minutes later. I mean, yeah, I agree. It was very awkwardly done. I don't see why they didn't just change the set or film, Big Show versus Drew on a Raw set. To your point, where they issued a challenge and it's next week or a couple weeks out, they do an angle challenge, then the match, as opposed to
even the show opens with him congratulating the new champion, and then it ends with him chokeslamming him or something. But yeah, it's or the big he knocks him out or whatever. But because Big Show is one of the guys who's legitimately bigger than Drew, and that's hard to find.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think you see it on the Raw side, like. They did the feud with Rollins, which looks like it's over, and now they have Lashley, but there's really not a lot of like really credible, awesome heels that Drew's going to work with, and he needs those guys to kind of establish himself. I feel like they're kind of thin on that side.
See, Jesse, I'd go a different direction with Drew. Raj, you want to jump in?
Oh, go ahead.
I would go a different direction only because, I mean, A, I'm biased, right? And B, he's tag team champion. But I would with a brand-to-brand invitational, I'd bring guys over that he can beat, that it's not going to put them in a bad spot. So like Corbin, whatever. But like, I love the idea of Kofi Kingston coming over. And Kofi can lose that match. I don't think it's a knock on Kofi at all to lose to the current WWE champion, especially when he's in a tag. It's just not his time to win that match. Like, to me, I'd have Kofi come and I'd build him against former champions and do things like that. But and again, I don't think if it was 2-on-1, that's a joke, right? If McIntyre beat the New Day, but if he just beats Kofi in a really competitive 15, 18-minute match, like I think that does more for his credibility than anything. It helps Kofi too, and then Kofi can always say, you know, my day will come later, or my next goal is Big E as champ, or something you build to. But I'd love to see them do more with, like, not necessarily the good versus bad guy, but be a little creative with Drew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is a great gimmick. They like put like food in Jimmy's like pants or something, and they let the dog go after him, and he does such a good job selling it. Jimmy Hart is one of these guys who I think is like historically very underrated. He's so charismatic and he's so good a talker. He does a lot for the Hart Foundation.
Yeah, I don't think Jimmy's let's hear from Matilda too, because you know. Animals and children are notoriously can be hard to work with.
Well, watch, yeah, they get him to bite his pants.
Yeah, live setting.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
She goes after the megaphone.
She doesn't accidentally go after Brett. She knows exactly where to go, and gets Jimmy, bites his megaphone.
Yeah, you couldn't have done it. You couldn't have done it any better than this. Really, this is like the best they could have hoped for.
I also love how the Hearts don't take off the tag belts. Like, that's such a classic Brett thing, right? It's all so real. It just added to the moment.
Yeah, that's what, when Brett and Diesel had that feud, and he would complain that Diesel would just, you know, keep the belt over his shoulder and not wear it around his waist. You could feel like that's how Brett really felt. You know, he's always been so respectful with the belt.
I think it was Bob Holly's book. He said Brett was a great professional, but he believed it was too real. And that's like a blessing and a curse, because if he didn't treat it that way, I mean, I think Brett's success is believing it the way he believes it. But yeah, I mean, it led to some great moments on TV.
Yeah. Bryce Russo saying, "Hi, Jesse, Raj, and Justin. Hope all is well. I'm a huge fan of your channel and the streams. Keep up the great work on YouTube, and I wish good health for you and your family." Thank you very much, Bryce. We
awesome, Bryce.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for watching. So we got Davey Boy and Dynamite Kid. If you want to talk about two guys who are bigger than they're probably supposed to be physically, and guys who changed a lot from 1980 to 1987, they're two pretty big candidates, but they're still so agile and such good workers. Davey Boy Smith, for a guy his size, his athleticism is tremendous.
Speaking of different bodies too, Brett's body, Brett, I mean, it's funny that Brett's a small guy for this era, right? Brett's huge.
Yeah.
But Brett definitely, by the time he gets to perfect at SummerSlam at Madison Square Garden in 91, Brett's got a different build. He takes a lot of pride in his body, but a little bit thicker here.
Yeah. Bruce Bennett asking, so why wouldn't the match end after the first fall? Bulldogs win by DQ. They can't win the titles on the next fall. WWF, they actually had that rule in 2 out of 3 falls matches. If one ends in a DQ, it still counts as a regular fall. That's how the Brainbusters beat Demolition. One of those falls that Brainbusters beat Demolition was a DQ, and then the next one was a pin, and they got the title. So I know it doesn't really make sense, but
I always thought it was kind of so they can do like the dusty finish.
Shame on us for trying to apply logic to these matches, too, right?
It's funny when you'll see people like, how can Brock still be champ? He hasn't defended the title in 30 days and stuff like that. Goldberg, any part Triple H, these guys in the past of The Rock. And it's like, this is wrestling. Come on, you gotta have some creative
leeway.
Well,
I can ask you a quick question.
We were talking.
I'm sorry, Jess.
No, I was just saying we're talking about the Slammies earlier, and I was thinking about like the people who get upset about the Slammy Awards, like who wins them and who doesn't. I always think that's good.
That you get me thinking, that Demolition Brainbuster match. Did they win both falls? I know the first was DQ, right? Was it 2-0, a rare 2-0, or did Demolition get a pinfall?
Demolition got a pinfall.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they got the. I'm pretty sure they got the first. I can't remember if it was the first or second, but yeah, it definitely wasn't a 2 and out. I think it the Rockers and the Hart Foundation? Then in a match that never aired, that might have been 2 straight falls, but the ring ropes broke.
That was like the set. Well, what happened was that like they did the finish, and then like I think Vince changed his mind. There's a reason for it. I forget why, but they basically said like I decided that like that they didn't want them to have tag belts, so they just didn't air it, and they never lost the tag
he
belt.
didn't like how it looked, and then by the time they had the next tapings, they just decided not to go in that direction.
So what's interesting is that basically they get the heat on Davey Boy, and then Dynamite comes in, which is unusual because Dynamite Kid historically as a smaller guy would get beaten down and then tag, and Davey who'd do the the classic big guy hot tag. But unfortunately for Dynamite, who is one of the very few like truly transcendent like workers in this industry, is that he has, his body is pretty much wrecked at this point. He had that terrible back injury. That's how they kind of did the title change earlier. And he really doesn't have that much left at this point, which is why you see a lot more Davey Boy Smith in this match, despite the fact that Dynamite Kid historically is one of like the best workers ever.
Brett's making these two guys look like a name, but not that they're not great, but Brett's making them both, especially Dynamite, in a limited capacity, making them look so good.
And he made Jim the Anvil Neidhart. I mean, when you think about the Anvil, he had so many great tag matches, and you don't think of the Anvil as a great worker, but the way he was able to use his power in these matches. And,
it's all about
contrast. So,
it's all about how you.
We just had
but I can't, and I'm not knocking Jim Neidhart. I'm a huge Neidhart fan. I love the dropkick. I can't tell you one great, like memorable. That's my favorite Jim Neidhart match. But I can think of a dozen Anvil matches that I loved in the Hart Foundation.
Right.
And absolutely, he could just be him. Like Brett could do all the work, and Anvil could be the special powerhouse. It's a great combination.
Yeah,
it's all about how using a guy to his strengths, which is Brett's really good at selling. He's really good at getting people invested in the match. Then he can, he fights back as the babyface underneath, and then tags in the big guy who runs wild. I mean, that was pretty much how Roman Reigns got his start on the main roster for a few years. Was basically Ambrose and Rollins would sell, and then they tag him, and he'd get the hot tag, and the glory spot as they'd call it. And then that's how you work around a guy who's maybe a little bit more limited.
And Tito Santana had run in, causing that DQ. So, Hart Foundation the Hart Foundation didn't get DQ'd, right? It was the Bulldogs.
Well, so Santana runs in and he's with the Bulldogs, so that kind of is up. So the Hart Foundation are up. No, wait a minute. No, I'm wrong. The Hart Foundation got DQ'd and the Bulldogs won the first fall.
So it's 1-1. I love Jimmy running with his hands up, getting chased.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's amazing to think. No, go ahead.
I'd say the Rockers didn't have a tag team title run, which, looking back, is remarkable. Like anybody could have a tag team title run now. I feel like it's just, and that's just the way titles change. Back then, it was so different.
Yeah, absolutely. They meant something. That's why back in the day, I could name every Intercontinental Champion. Through like Mr.
Everyone.
Perfect. Yeah, and then. Once the Attitude Era came, they were just changing that thing every few weeks.
I could name every Intercontinental Champion up until like 98 or 99.
And tag champions are pretty easy to remember up until like that Godwin Body Donna era, like, and then it's like who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Amy Elliott Vaughn saying, "I forget." Oh, sorry. You can wake up by elbowing in the back of the neck. Good times. She had a different one saying, "I have so enjoyed watching the Saturday night's main events. Great memories from my childhood." Me too.
Why they don't incorporate some of this stuff into the current product? I mean, you can easily throw this match in, or a match like this, or something, and have again. I think it's so easy. There's so many good talents that to have to do commentary, especially on Raw. With a 3-hour Raw, you can't have guys do commentary over these matches. It would be fun, especially it's not necessarily better than what we see now. It's just different.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I like one of my favorite series that they do on the WWE Network is they have the wrestlers like pick their favorite match or like a match that they really enjoyed. And they don't do commentary, but they do a little explanation beforehand about like why this is one of their favorite matches. And it's like, oh, I was a big Bret Hart fan as a kid, or I was a huge British Bulldog fan, or anything like that. And it kind of makes you think about the match a little bit more. It's like, wow, this inspired so-and-so to become a professional wrestler.
You knew that wasn't going to end well for Bret.
Never did. Yeah. I don't think he ever hit that once.
I don't think anyone's ever jumped towards the rings with their legs spread out, or through the ring ropes with their legs spread out, and had it end out favorably.
Great drop kick by Davey. All right, hang time.
And he's probably like 260 at this point.
Oh yeah, at least.
Yeah, it's crazy. They were considered smaller guys in the company. You know,
and they're enormous.
I know. Dynamite Kid in today's WWE, he'd be bigger than 90% of the roster, or 80%.
Yeah, or at least like mass wise, like muscle wise. It's interesting. Right. I thought about Dynamite. Like Dynamite's like really ahead of his time as a worker, but it's hard for me to think that he would have been like that much of a bigger star if he was around today. He'd definitely be like more appreciated, but he really couldn't cut promos, and I don't want to bury him, but I know I love Dynamite Kid, but he really didn't have like the kind of
the charisma,
charisma and entertainment that like you would need to get over, in any era. He'd be more appreciated because people would understand like how good of a worker he was. But it's hard. I think it's almost like he's better off being like this ahead of his time kind of performer that inspired a future generation of performers, as opposed to if he were to just come around now, he wouldn't be as special.
But I think that can be said with a lot of guys too, right? I've got tonight we have Havlicek steals the ball behind me. I just feel like too a lot of the past generations, like maybe they wouldn't have worked now, right? Like the guys are so talented, people are so talented now. Here comes Tito, but yeah, I think he came at the right time, Dynamite.
Yeah. And Tito, Bruce Pritchard was talking about it on his podcast recently, was in the running to become WWF champion. When Ric Flair, when he had to basically drop the title in 92.
Do you believe that, Raj?
I mean, it sounds unbelievable, doesn't it?
See, I remember it was in Tito's book and reading it, and I was like, But I could see that
Pritchard
being
was saying it, and he was there.
Yeah.
And he was saying he was in that meeting. It was him, Vince, and one other person. I'm forgetting who, maybe Pat Patterson. And he said that it was between Tito and Brett, and then they did the UK tour, and Brett just was so over that they decided to go with Brett.
I could see him being on a list of guys, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
Hey, because there's no harm in that. But I guess we have the benefit of hindsight, too.
Because that's when the title really meant something. You were really putting it. It's not like now where you can pretty much put it on anyone. Wait, that was it? Did I miss it?
The finish ends, the crowd pops crazy, but then they kind of announce, because the first fall was a DQ. It's like I said, like almost like a dusty finish where.
So they did adhere to that here, and they didn't do it for Demolition and the Brainbusters. Yeah,
so the Bulldogs do not win the titles, even though the crowd popped like they thought they did, which. Long term probably isn't the best strategy to do that to crowds, but keeps the titles on the Hart Foundation.
Yeah, so Bruce's message earlier about why did the match even continue after the first fall being a DQ?
That's what I thought watching it earlier when I watched this the first time. Why even do that match? But again, it's all to do. I'm calling it the dusty finish. I think this slightly predates the real focus of the dusty finish, but the idea of you do a finish, the crowd pops thinking something happened, and then some technicality comes in. And ends up not being the case.
The second fall should have been the DQ then. And they should have still celebrated thinking they won the titles. And then, otherwise it made no sense why they had the match continue anyway. So
are they back in the same room with Hogan they were in with Andre?
Let's see. Let's look at the couches.
We're zoomed in. We're against the wall. It's the pictures. I thought that plant was in the background.
Yeah, they're at some classy place. They're on the campus of Notre Dame. I think the arena's on the campus of Notre Dame. I've never been to Notre Dame. Justin, what are your thoughts on Notre Dame? You're a Catholic school guy.
Yeah, I visited once during college. I was supposed to go back. I went to Boston College. I was supposed to go back in the fall of 2004, Jesse. It was a big BC Notre Dame college football game. Senior year, we rented a Winnebago, but I had to back out late because it was the World Series. And my brother and I were working in Fenway, and it was games 1 and 2 against the Cardinals. So, so I've only been once, but I was always impressed with Notre Dame.
Bruce here, Bulldogs 85, 86 versus the Hearts, probably the best tag matches of all time. I don't think I can argue with you.
For their time, especially in the WWF, like I said, they work in that Calgary style, which is so athletic, and it's so much different than what you would normally see in WWF, which helped create a nice variety of the show that not all the matches were the same. I mean, you compare the match we just watched to like the Kamala and Jake Roberts match, and they both got over. They both had big pops for them. They both worked, but they were completely different.
And you see the importance of star power back then. Savage wasn't there yet, and you see this Saturday night's main event did a lot lower rating, than the prior one that had Hogan in action.
Mm-hmm.
So
the jump from the tag comment. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna argue that they were brilliant, but the tag division had so much diversity in terms of like Demolition worked a very different style. I love like when you pair the Rockers and the Brainbusters together. Those matches were they don't get talked about now, but they were really good matches. The tag division had so much variety to it. It was so special.
Strike Force, they were great for the short time they were together. Well, the Islanders were really good. They're underrated. Underrated.
The really good match is, I want to say it's at WrestleMania 2. It's the US Express, which is Wyndham and Spivey versus the Bulldogs. I want to say that's WrestleMania 2.
No, I think WrestleMania 2 was the Hearts and the Bulldogs.
Oh no! Well, WrestleMania 2 had the Hearts.
Oh no, it was Greg Valentine. You're thinking of Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake, right?
The Dream Team.
The Dream Team.
Let's see here.
Against the Bulldogs.
I might be right. That's right. It might be. Then I might be thinking of WrestleMania 1. Quick internet search here, real quick, before Bruce tells us the right answer.
And we got another promo.
Yeah, you guys are right. Dream Team at WrestleMania 2.
His first televised match against his first Intercontinental title defense, and then by the time Saturday night's main event comes around again, he's kind of out. He's on the outs of the company. He does have another WrestleMania appearance, but he's beaten in the first round. And then, he's just basically
Ricky, in terms of that EST thinking, which it's always hyperbole, like the greatest, the biggest, the lowest. Ricky has one of the biggest falls from graces in WWE history. I mean, from what he does with Savage at WrestleMania 3 to really never, in that iteration, right? Never having the next great moment he has is what? With Jericho? It takes a while.
Yeah, and at the Survivor Series later this year, he was on Randy Savage's team, and they didn't even do an angle with that or anything. They didn't even make it a story, even though they had such a legendary feud. So we got Savage watching Steamboat, so you could tell here that the plan for the summer is, because they're, again, Saturday night's main event was to build a house shows. The plan here is for Savage and Steamboat. That's what they're building for the summer.
Well,
and very shortly thereafter, Ricky the Dragon wants to take time off with his wife, just having a baby. And basically, they were going to give it to Butch Reed. They couldn't find Butch Reed at the tapings that day. Went with Honky Tonk Man and hadn't dropped the title.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, at the times they had done a lot to build up Steamboat to win this title, and they give it to him, and then as soon as he wins it, almost, he asked for the time off. And I mean, it was a different time. I don't know how they'd handle it today, how Vince would handle it today. But at the time, and you couldn't really afford to take the time off because the roster was so loaded that unless you were like a guy like Hogan, they were going to find someone who was going to replace you.
Even then, back then, Hogan didn't take time off until it was time to do a movie.
Right, but if Hogan did take time off, he'd come back and his position would basically still be there, as opposed to a guy like Steamboat. And of course, Steamboat would go, he'd come back to the company in late 1987. He'd keep going into 1988. He ended up, kind of having a nothing match at WrestleMania 4, and then he's gone. And then in 89, he has, the great series with Ric Flair, which are probably with addition to the WrestleMania match with Savage, the best remembered parts of his career. But then he'd kind of go back and forth. He'd go back to the WWF, had not really do a lot. He'd go back to WCW, and then he ended up getting an injury in, I think, 1993. And that was kind of it for him, like actively in the ring until he came back with the Jericho match, like 15 years later.
Well, Ricky had a huge run in WCW after he left WWF here with the steam, with the Flair feud and
NWA World Champion,
winning his first world title, or his only.
So big, in fact, that Vince McMahon decided to drop his name when he came back to the company. What are you doing?
And put scales on him and have him blowing kerosene. I could see you giving someone who's unestablished that gimmick, but give that to Steamboat, who's in his own company, he's already an established star. And
but that's that was like the Harley Race thing. Like, he's got to be the king. You can't just.
But that's one thing. Harley Race he was bringing someone in and giving him a gimmick. With Steamboat, he was already there. He was there before.
Well, they give him the
WrestleMania 3, lean on their own past.
Yeah.
They give him the dragon gimmick. He's working the dragon gimmick now. He mentions it in every promo. This dragon breathes fire. All that kind of stuff.
But then they want him to be an actual dragon. It's one thing as a nickname. It's like if Jake the Snake came back and he's just the Snake and he has to wear an outfit and he slithers around the ring. they took away his, again, when you think of a WrestleMania main event and the names attached, the Dragon is not, that's not like a WrestleMania headlining name. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is.
It took away his credibility, which I don't think could have been the plan, because why would you not want to make money with a guy? But they did strip him of what made him him.
Yeah, he was never the same. And that was the era where they started overdoing the gimmicks to death, and you really started seeing the decline like fast and
But
furious.
even Bret Hart was the Hitman. I don't think it works. He had to be Bret the Hitman Hart.
Exactly.
So many,
Macho Man Randy Savage, not just Macho Man.
Yeah, I mean, nicknames work. This is that time period. I think Jake Roberts tells a story about like he's on like a WWE tour and you got Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. He's got like a lizard, and Jake has the snake, and the Bulldogs have Matilda, and Coco Beware has Frankie, and it's like a zoo that's traveling from town to town with these wrestlers. Vince was big on animals at this point,
and the wrestlers had to take it themselves.
Yeah,
Coco Beware with Frankie. Sorry, I don't know if you said that or not, but
yeah, no, that's one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. He had to I wouldn't, these guys are traveling 300 days a year, and you also throw in taking care of a parrot or a snake. I love these Macho Man pictures that they have. I also like they're in the locker room. Do they like bring in like an old like RCA TV and like put it in the locker room? Like now when they do that, like they're always looking at some screen. You could say like, oh, it's just like an iPad or something like that. But I like the idea of them moving like this old TV into the locker room.
This right here, what they're doing. Savage is helping Hercules. Helping Steamboat.
Yes,
it's
a good storyline.
Foot because he doesn't want Hercules to win the title. He wants to beat Steamboat for the title.
Yeah,
so now
and
Hercules is upset.
The Hercules, Chris Masters, I guess too. But that full Nelson, it was so legitimate, so believable when Herc locked it on. Jesse Ventura was a big part of that too, just making you believe that move was real and you weren't getting out of it.
Right. Bobby Lashley's bringing it back.
I like it. I think
it's all about selling it. They sold the Master Lock. Like I'm like again, I'm gonna date myself as a youngster, but I was like in 5th grade, and at school everyone would be like putting each other in the Master Lock and trying to you come up behind someone and put them in the Master Lock and be like the Master Lock, and that was the whole thing. And unfortunately for Masters, it never really worked out for him. But it's a good gimmick if you just build it up. I don't know if they can build it up with Lashley in like 3 weeks and expect it to like be super over for when he wrestles Drew. But I like the idea of it.
Yeah, one of the problems with WWE is when they're moving on to the next opponent, they're trying to build the heels way too quickly, as opposed to giving them more of an established run. Like build Lashley for the summer, and then so by the time you get to Drew, it feels big, as opposed to. He just started winning matches, over the past few weeks. And, he just lost at WrestleMania.
That gets back to my point of them not really having a tremendous amount of depth on the heel side. Like they did the Rollins feud. They're kind of moving on from that. If it's not Lashley, who else do they have?
Rollins is the Monday Night Messiah. It's just not the same as Rollins as Rollins.
Yeah, and I don't think a corporate authority would work now necessarily.
Right,
but that worked a lot better than this. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if he had that character, but they changed it up. Like he was doing the same thing with the AOP and Murphy, but it wasn't a Messiah church group, but just he's just hired muscle to take care of him. I think it would work a lot better.
So Hercules
got the chain, and he starts choking out Steamboat. Match is over. So
Hercules blowing his chance.
It's interesting they didn't just have Steamboat beat Hercules here. So they're protecting Hercules right now, because even at WrestleMania 3 with Billy Jack Haynes, he did not lose.
He won the Battle Royal. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So he's getting a push. It was a couple of years later where Hercules started becoming almost like an enhancement guy. He would just lose all the time.
Well, this is
my
part of
Hercules moment. I think it was the '92 Rumble when he's in the ring with Flair, and Bobby just mentions how great Hercules is, and then he starts to beat up Flair, and Gorilla goes, "You probably remember how you treated him," something like that. So Bobby was just so good, and
he was so good.
So this is like maybe my favorite part of the show, which is Savage is kind of tempted to get in the ring to save Steamboat, and he doesn't, and it's slowly, very slowly, kind of building towards his babyface turn, because the whole idea that he wants to be
doesn't
Steamboat.
he start kicking the hell out of Steamboat now?
Raj, you're jumping ahead of me. The point is that they're kind of teasing the idea that Savage, it's kind of putting the idea in fans' heads that maybe Randy is going to be a babyface or could be a babyface. Now you don't really know what he's going to do here at this point. He kind of teases what he's going to do.
Well, I like that Randy's obsessed, right? Randy, and that's kind of good guy, bad guy. Randy, he wanted the belt, whether it was Ric Flair at the world title, it was Steamboat with the IC belt. If Randy wanted the belt, that was the object of his desire, which Hogan was interesting because they had Liz involved, Flair too, for that matter, but he wanted the belt.
But see,
so Savage looking concerned over Steamboat right now.
But fans right now are probably thinking, like, what is Randy going to do? Is he going to help this guy up? And then, of course, he runs to the top rope.
And the way he would get to that top rope was so it was
fluid.
So Randy Savage. He just not even just fluid. It was just such an interesting style. Like it's so unique.
He doesn't walk. He like bounces or floats. It's weird, but it works.
Yeah, it's like a frog jump, and I don't know. It's very unique.
You don't. I mean, no one. A lot of guys do an elbow off the top, and there's not many guys I would rate in the same class as Savage, even though everyone's done an elbow drop at some point.
Hacksaw here, he looks like someone at a $1 a beer bar, getting ready to get kicked out kind of deal.
He's got his ticket.
Right.
It's like this. It's funny seeing the tickets, like the tiny, like red, like tiny stub, as opposed to like the Ticketmaster tickets that they have now. And he's making sure that Nikolai Volkov's not going to sing the Russian national anthem or the Soviet national anthem.
Yeah. Duggan was super over there for a while.
You wonder what happens.
I mean, what's that?
You wonder what happens if he doesn't get, if he and the Sheik don't take that car ride, or if I don't think he replaces Hogan, but he's definitely got he's got an argument that he could.
Yeah, and he was a big star.
Even after the car accident, the DUI, he when they brought, he came back and he had a feud with Andre the Giant, and they had him knock him out with a 2x4, which was, you didn't see anyone lay out Andre the Giant back then.
Yeah.
Well, he wins the Rumble, which, it's the first Rumble, so it's not quite the Rumble, it's not like...
It was on USA Network, it was 20 men.
But still, he did get a push, and, he had a really successful career in, in Memphis and in Mid-South Wrestling, right before coming to the WWF, so he was a really successful babyface, working those Superdome shows for Bill Watts, but, yeah, he's over on these shows.
His payouts in those days wasn't anything close.
A definite ceiling when he comes back that he just can never crack. Whether, that's probably Vince, right? If he loses faith in you, he loses faith in you.
Right. So Duggan was definitely like someone who could headline, when they had the A, B, and C shows, he could headline the C shows.
Yep.
So it does seem like they're kind of just...
Yeah.
It does seem like they're kind of like asking begging for fans to now jump over the railing and get in the ring if Nikolai Volkov is singing the national anthem, because Duggan's saying Duggan says he's banned from ringside, and so he bought a ticket so he could be at ringside, and then he just hops the railing and
he's not ringside though.
No. He said in the promo that he's banned from ringside. So I can't be at ringside, but I bought this ticket. Classic. I can't be in the building, but I bought a ticket, so now I'm here as a fan. And then he immediately hops the rail and starts, and then he's ringside, and then nothing ever happens to him.
To Justin's point, he's not ringside. He's in the ring. Well, technically, he didn't break the ring. Technically, he didn't break the rule.
But also, too, a pretty big deal that like Volkov and Sheik are established. Like, they're really putting Duggan in a great position early in his run.
Yeah.
Well, this is the Can-Am connection, which they got together a year earlier in Montreal. It was kind of like the last days of the Montreal territory. And Rick Martel was kind of like the last great Montreal babyface. And then, they would be pretty much broken up. I think Tom Zenk would leave the company in July of 87. So
just a couple months after this.
Yeah, so he's not really around after this. And then Martel kind of has like a more memorable run in the WWF as the Yes, I Am a model.
And
but Strikeforce too, and they just kind of plugged Tito into this too. It's the same look. It's a better theme. I don't necessarily know if they came out to Girls in Cars yet, but like that, they had a theme. They had a good Robbie Dupree, but like they just throw the white trunks on Tito and kind of make you forget about the Z-Man.
And they were a good team.
I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Two very good workers. That's a great example too. Like that's the Rockers before the Rockers. There's no payoff on television or pay-per-view to that blow up. I think they're on opposite sides of the Survivor Series, but there's not much to it to Martel and Santana's break.
Yeah, they were supposed to have a match at SummerSlam that year, and then Martel got injured, and then I forgot what they did with Tito that year. But I think Shawn and Marty, they did that Royal Rumble match, right?
Well, they were supposed to have the WrestleMania 8 match, which is actually Tito, and that's what Marty wasn't there. I feel like that match was supposed to happen 3 or 4 times, and Marty was just on a different
day. And then later that year, Jannetty came back. They did that match on Raw where Jannetty won the Intercontinental title.
Great Raw moment.
Yeah, it was. It was awesome. That's when it felt unpredictable. That's when it's they were starting to really get that going.
Somebody said to me, Raj, and I'll go to the hopefully not the grave saying this. This is what I'll be saying when I go to the grave. But like Marty, somebody was like, who was it? Somebody said to me recently, Tucker from Heavy Machinery, just the Jannetty. I'm sorry, Marty Jannetty was badass. Marty Jannetty, especially late '80s, early '90s Jannetty. Before like the new Rockers, Marty was awesome. I'm a huge Marty Jannetty fan.
Yeah, it was never a talent thing with Marty. It was him getting in his own way. Talent-wise, he was always there. He was always popular. He would always get the crowd reactions.
It was interesting.
He just couldn't keep out of trouble.
The Revolts,
to this day.
No, like the Talk is Jericho, with the Revolts, formerly known as the Revival, they were on, and they mentioned like something about the Marty Jannetty of the team, like someone said that. And then, like, they said they hated that. And Jericho kind of is like, yeah, I hate that. Like, Marty Jannetty wasn't really successful and really great. And, if you watch the matches, like the Rockers matches, it's not, like, super obvious that Shawn Michaels is, like, the major superstar on their team. Both of those guys are really 100%. Good.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Shawn may be a little more confident on the mic, but I agree. Marty was tremendous.
Yeah, it wasn't until, like, what was it? What was 95, I guess, where Shawn started working on his physique, getting rid of the mullet, that he started to look more like a main eventer. But
yeah, I mean, he had that match.
I think you wouldn't be able to tell who's the bigger star just watching the match.
He had. It's actually like kind of a match that like people don't really talk about, but it's really good. It's I think it's the 1993 Survivor Series. It's like right after Brett had won the title for the first time, and he wrestles Shawn.
Brett and Shawn, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of like the first, Brett and Shawn title, world title match, and it's really good.
It's good, but that was also the first world title match that I felt didn't feel big at all in WWF.
Even though
if you're watching at that time, sorry, go ahead, Justin.
No, Bobby's explanation was that the Bulldog beat Brett. Shawn beat the Bulldog, so Shawn would beat Brett. But I agree, and it was a title versus title match that wasn't because the IC belt wasn't on the line. Yeah, that would have been a nice spot for the Bulldog or something different because that had no oomph to it. I agree.
Yeah, like Brett versus Davey Boy before that for the Intercontinental title felt much bigger than that, and just Shawn wasn't there yet. And the Can-Am Connection just beat Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik.
Okay, trivia time.
One quick Marty story.
Question.
Please.
No, go ahead, Justin.
It was a really fun I drove out to, I think it was Glastonbury, if I'm getting my dates right, but there was a Cody Kurt Angle cage match, and it took forever. It was Northeast Wrestling. It took forever to it was the main event, so it took like 45 extra minutes to set up the cage, and you knew like a big spot was going to happen, and there was a moonsault off the cage. It was a great match and just a fun show. And I think Jannetty was doing a signing that night, and I just said, Marty, 5-10 minutes. It'd be fun to do a catch-up type interview. He said, I'd love to. He had my number. I had his. He's like, I'll call you in an hour. I stayed over that night because it was raining and want to drive back in the rain. And Marty must have called me at 3:20 in the morning. And I answered it groggy and tired. And he goes, you still got a minute to talk? I'm like, now? But that was my kind of Marty being Marty story.
Yeah. Yeah, he's one of those, there's something endearing about him. Even when same thing when we talked with him on the site, he's got a likability, but he's got that screwball, like you want to help him out, likability, where he just
he kept getting work. I mean, he's still working today.
Yeah.
He does have something endearing about him, but again, Marty is one of those to me that could have been a much bigger star because he was such a great.
I mean, there was that time when he was hired back when he had that match with Kurt Angle. It was a great match on TV. So WWF hired him back. WWE, I guess it was WWE now, and yeah, he kind of screwed it up, and he was gone again within weeks.
So my trivia question.
My takeaway. Oh, trivia. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. This is for the chat. We'll let the chat play along here.
Real quick. That's the end of the show. The Can-Am wins, and then Vince and Jesse say au revoir, and that's it.
That was the best moment, though. That when the snake clears the ring, when Jake clears the ring with Damien, that was the best moment of that show.
You talked about, Justin, the way they the whole Brandy, Jake the Snake thing, like the snake just kind of laid on Brandy and they didn't sell that they were afraid of it. That's like the perfect sell of the snake. Maybe Andre has the perfect sell of the snake, but
everybody that you had to run from it. It's the Undertaker's casket. It's the same thing. It's like you don't put somebody in the casket and close it till the story's done.
It's like, what's the point of having it out there otherwise? If people aren't scared of it, then what's the point?
I'm ready for the trivia.
Okay, so the Iron Sheik, as mentioned a lot, was part of his gimmick, or maybe it's the truth, I don't know, is that he was the former bodyguard of the Shah of Iran. Another wrestler on the show had a gimmick where they were the bodyguard of a 1970s world leader. Who was it, and who was the world leader? In the chat, please play along in the chat if you know the answer. Someone else.
Last time I got asked the trivia, I got it wrong, so I think I'm going to be 0 for 2. That's a great question. So someone on this show,
not the Iron Sheik.
The Iron Sheik is one of them. There's another one who also had a gimmick where they were the bodyguard of a 1970s world leader.
Jesse, on the show, like part of the show, or
we saw them tonight. We saw them tonight. They were in a match, which lessens it.
I'll let you go first, Justin, and I'll give my answer.
Oh, thank you so much. Because my first guess would have been Ken Patera, but he was just on the. That's why I asked about the video.
Yeah. No, Ken Patera was in the dark match. I didn't mention that the dark match on this show, which was probably the real main event for the show, was Hulk Hogan and Ken Patera. They beat Hercules and Andre the Giant. So Hogan and Andre did wrestle on this show, but not on Saturday Night's Main Event.
I'm just eliminating the guys I know it wasn't, right? Like it wasn't Danny Davis. It wasn't George.
It was
Steele.
Danny Davis. No, just kidding.
Just say no.
Yeah.
No chance. No, Danny's not. He's not great. It wasn't Jimmy Hart. Let's think. It's a tough question. Don't say if I'm right or wrong, but I'll say mine, and then Raj can say his, and everybody shares theirs. My answer will be, I'll say the body.
Okay, that's good.
Jesse? I'm gonna go Nikolai. I'll just go with the tag team, like Nikolai with the president of Russia, something like that.
So the answer is Kamala. He was allegedly the bodyguard of Idi Amin in Uganda, and that was part of his gimmick. And I read that today when I was researching Kamala, which was how I knew his entire career history, because I have it in my notes here. And I was saying, like, his gimmick is that, and the Iron Sheik was also the bodyguard of the Shah of Iran, which I don't think
the Iron Sheik really was, wasn't he?
He said that, and like I'm not going to say it's wrong, but it also sounds like something that someone would say. I know he came over to the U.S.
I think he was. I think he legitimately was.
Legit. Like Sergeant Slaughter wasn't a Marine, but I thought Sheik legitimately had that background.
Yeah.
I can say for certain that Jim Harris from Mississippi was not actually Idi Amin's bodyguard.
No.
So what was what was the highlight of the show to you guys?
I'll jump in.
Go ahead, Justin.
I thought Jake and Honky were really, really good. To me, it was a question of like, what do you do with Honky from there? Because he's going to lose that feud eventually. And go figure, he had a much bigger moment with the Intercontinental belt. I like anytime you see the Bulldogs and the Harts together is fun. But I mean, to me, there's just something about Bobby and Andre. And I think Raj talked about this the last couple of weeks too. Even if you knew, so I didn't know Andre before he was, I knew Andre as the bad guy with Bobby as that villain from WrestleMania 3. That's how I knew Andre the Giant. They were so good together. It kind of wiped out, like, they were so good. It wiped out like Andre's history of being this mega babyface. I just thought they were so electric together. Plus, Steamboat, for whatever reason, is we always talk about Savage. Like, he made Hercules look like a star there. Steamboat was really good too. So lots of highlights. Again, it's the golden era. It's the classic section of the WWE.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I hate having to always pick Savage, but for me, it was the Steamboat Hercules match with Savage, and Savage interfering on behalf of Steamboat. You don't see it's simple storytelling. You don't see that angle anymore. I mean, you could have done that with like Rollins. If again, if we did Drew versus the Big Show over a couple weeks, had that match, and then Rollins kept like trying to screw Big Show so that he can get that title match with Drew. It's something that would still work. It still makes sense. So I love that bit of storytelling. I thought it was unique, and I thought Savage at the end with, acting concerned because he had been helping Steamboat more or less the whole match, and then boom with the flying elbow. And he got there so fast and dropped him. I thought it was awesome.
There was no doubt, Raj, at the end of that, he wanted that belt. That belt was his. Like, I loved it. There's what's the story here? No, there's no question. It's like Savage wants his belt back. I love it.
Yeah. I really like that angle because, again, it kind of puts the idea in fans' heads that like you don't really know what Savage is doing. It's not I want the belt back at all costs. It's I want to beat the guy who beat me for the belt, and that's a different story. And it's unfortunate that we saw, we never really got to see that feud because Steamboat would take the time off, and then when he brought back, it was just completely different. I want to say the Hart versus Bulldogs match because that's probably like the best match, but the finish is so bad with like the DQ and everything like that. I mean, it's still a tradition, as we've seen on Raw and NXT, that bad DQ finishes can still happen and ruin otherwise very good matches. But that's one of my things. I have another question, and I was thinking about this because this is kind of the fallout for WrestleMania 3. We've talked a lot about WrestleMania 3, and WrestleMania.
Trivia?
No, it's not trivia.
It's over 7 right now.
It's an opinion. It's an opinion question. So WrestleMania 3 at the time was the biggest event in WWF history, 93,000, 78,000, whatever number you want to believe, and then it was broken. WrestleMania 32, right, in Dallas. Do you think that WWE will ever have a bigger crowd than that again?
Than Dallas?
Mm-hmm.
Next year, if they're able to do Los Angeles, I'm sure they'll.
How big is the stadium? I know they can say whatever number they want.
It's supposed to be bigger.
It's still, I think it's still under construction, Raj. No.
Yeah, and they had paused it for a while. Due to COVID.
I don't know where they are now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Gavin Newsom saying that they can start playing, they can start doing sports again here soon, just with empty arenas. But
Vince is obsessed with
I'm pretty
numbers,
sure it's bigger or as big as Cowboy Stadium.
Well, Cowboy Stadium is weird because when it first opened, they had like 100,000 seat attendance. But after like a year or two, they shifted it, and now I think it seats like 80,000 or like roughly the same as most other NFL stadiums. So,
were you guys at that Mania?
I've never been to WrestleMania before.
Oh, really?
That's not true. So that's not true. Actually, I went to WrestleMania 14 when I was 3 years old.
That's awesome.
But I have no memories of it whatsoever. But I've never been.
WrestleMania 32, Justin? Is that the one you're asking about, or?
Yeah, because San Jose the year before was the Niner Stadium,
right? 2
football stadiums, and I know Dallas is a little bigger, typical Dallas fashion, but I thought that was just a very tough stadium to navigate. Like everyone was in everyone's way.
I was at that one.
Dallas was tough. San Jose, the Niner Stadium was cathartic. Like you could walk around, no one was in anyone's way. But and that show was cool too, because if you remember, like when Rollins takes the RKO, it's sunny out. When Taker and Bray Wyatt work, it's like dusk. Like that when Rollins wins the belt, it's dark. That Mania was so perfect. But Cowboy Stadium, and that's a weird Mania too. Everyone I felt like was in everyone's way, just building wise.
Well, they also had the trouble getting people going. So that was the last time I went live. I usually don't go. I go for the weekend, and then I head back on Saturday because everything's so crazy on the site on Sunday. That was the one year where I did go, and I regretted it. I regretted it because things did get crazy on the site. But before there was something wrong with the scanner, so they weren't allowing people to come into the stadium. So you just had all these people. It was hot outside. You had some people like fainting and just dying in the heat. And then when they let people in, it was like just a big herd. And then we were on the floor, and then to get to the floor is a whole nother section you had to get through. And then there was a big line there. It was just a disaster. And to your point, Levi Stadium, I didn't go there for that WrestleMania, but I went for the Super Bowl 50. And it was easy. I mean, it was no problem.
So I learned my lesson from Dallas. Speaking of Jake Roberts, it was some Jake Roberts, like he was making an appearance at an indie show following 32. So my plan was to jet out of WrestleMania after I did a story. It was like a midnight show, so I had time to get there. Or whatever time it was, I had time. to get there. The situation in Dallas was so like cabbies would only take cash. I think it was like a starting fare of $100 cash. It's why I take Ubers now. It was so miserable that night. Not only rivaled by the MetLife Mania in the rain, people walking out and it poured. I actually stayed in the building. I never left. I stayed in the building till I think 4:30 or 5 in the morning, and then I could finally get an Uber home because the surcharge. I'm getting way off track, but like the side stories of WrestleMania. So we're officially off track.
So well, according to Wikipedia, which I have now, the capacity for SoFi Stadium is 70,000, but it says expandable to 100,000 for the Super Bowl, WrestleMania, the FIFA World Cup, and Summer Olympics and other major events. That's weird that it's 70,000 for football, but they have 30,000 extra seats for the Super Bowl, or soccer, which would presumably I can understand WrestleMania because you do the seats on the field and anything.
It's also Wikipedia, so you know.
Well, yeah, I know. I'm just doing some this is our half-ass internet research corner. Right. But they have it's interesting.
So it's about the size of Cowboy Stadium.
Yeah. So they'll probably claim a higher number just to break the record. I don't know what the real number is in Dallas. I think it's like 90,000.
I just know being there, and Justin, I think you can attest to this too. It was packed. There weren't empty sections. There weren't any areas tarped off. It was packed.
Yeah, I absolutely. I don't know what the real number was, but I'm sure, of course, they beefed it up. But that place was packed, no doubt.
Yeah,
sure. All right, that's pretty much all we got for today, guys.
Jesse,
anything else?
We got to redeem ourselves. One more trivia question. Come on, what do you got for us? Something from that era. We're gonna get one right.
Well, I have to think of one. Let me think of one. I can't. I'm trying to think of one that's.
Hey, I know, Carl. I got one for you guys.
Okay.
Who did the British Bulldogs wrestle at the very first SummerSlam? And how did it end?
I don't know the answer to that. The only thing I know about the first SummerSlam is the Hogan Andre, or Hogan Savage DiBiase
Mega
Andre
Powers
match.
versus the Mega Bucks.
I know it was
the
at
opening match on the pay-per-view.
I know it was at Madison Square Garden.
I heard it clicking. Don't cheat, Jesse.
I've seen the show before. I am most certainly not cheating.
Was
I don't know.
I didn't hear the click.
I don't
I'm
know
gonna say
the
Demolition,
answer.
but I'm wrong. Was it Demolition?
No.
Let me think.
Demolition wrestled the Hart Foundation.
Can I just guess a random tag team match? I feel like I have not looked it up. I did click onto Wikipedia, but I did not look it up. So now I feel this is a complete guess. I'm gonna guess Rhythm and Blues.
No.
Okay.
I don't think they were together. They were Honky Tonk.
I would have been in more.
Warrior at that
I know. I would have been in more trouble if I got it right. So I'm glad I got it wrong.
It was the Rougeau brothers, and they had they had a
Makes
freaking
sense.
awesome match, and it was they went to a 20-minute time limit draw.
So one of those interesting things is that Vince is obviously the main. Vince
Those time limit draws were like the worst.
Yeah.
Vince is
It's not a count out, but a time limit draw. Come on.
Well, a good time limit draw can work. It just has to be good. Well, one of my favorite
I'm
matches.
still waiting to see a good one.
No.
Darby Allin, Cody Rhodes is a good time.
That's
last summer. That was good.
That's a perfect time limit draw because the idea was that Darby didn't looked really good in the match. Cody didn't really lose anything by losing to Darby.
That's on a short list of
Omega
time limit draws that work. Yeah.
No, Omega Okada, the 60-minute draw. Raj, Omega versus Okada. That's sacrilege.
I think when you're going, when it's the main event of a show, of a big show, you should have a finish. For Cody versus Darby wasn't the main event. I think it's good, but I feel like a main event, a DQ, any kind of draw sucks.
I agree with the DQ. I think
it's why are you spending all this time for no payoff?
To me, that's why Brody Lee probably shouldn't lose clean on Saturday night, but he has to, right?
He shouldn't be in that match yet. It's way too soon. I think it sends a bad look. It's a bad look having a mid-card WWE guy come in right away in the main event, in my opinion. And from a storyline perspective, you don't want him losing yet. You want to build that character up more.
Right. Does it help though if they work I'm guessing it's just because it's going to be a good match. They have chemistry. They work really well together. If that match knocks you off, knocks your socks off, do you change your opinion a little bit? Because again, you got to end that with to me at the very least, it's Moxley beating a giant type guy to establish himself as your premier champion and one of the best in wrestling. But do you have a different opinion if that match is really good or?
Well, I think it's that genie in the bottle kind of thing where once you see somebody beat, it kind of takes away some of that aura, right? Once you've seen Andre beaten, it's not as big the next time he loses again, or anyone. So Wardlow. So when you bring someone in, I feel like, and you have big
who would
plans,
you put in that spot then? Who would be better for Mox on Saturday?
You could have done. I mean, you could have done. I guess they don't want to do MJF yet, but that's a natural one. You could have done Jack Swagger. I mean, I don't think this pay-per-view is going to do big numbers anyway. I don't know how much more Brody Lee would mean than Jake Hager. I mean,
I thought it was
instead of doing that on TV. What's that?
Yeah, I thought you build to a Jericho. Same thing, right? Because Mox needs to win. It's too soon for Brody Lee. You go with Jericho in that match.
Yeah.
Or go something creative with that. But that to me is why I still think Cody wins. I don't see how you can, if you have Cody and Mox both win. I'm sure I think Lance Archer would recover quicker than Brody Lee. But if you're Lance Archer, you gotta win that match. Like, he's their monster. You can't lose. But I don't know. I don't know how you do it. They very easily could box themselves into a corner in those matches.
Yeah, I just think, the good matches, that's one thing, but the one thing with this AEW pay-per-view, and lately, just nothing feels big. Like when they first started, when Moxley came out, it felt big. It felt like something that could bring in new fans. Right now, it doesn't feel big, and I feel like they need more of that, and part of that is protecting these new stars, not making them all comical, having some serious guys in there.
My thing with Lee is that it's too soon, I think. So last night when he cut his first promo, I'm like, this is just like the Wyatt family, where this guy says stuff and it kind of sounds okay, but it doesn't. You have no idea what his actual goals are, what his purpose is. I get it, he's a cult leader, but I don't feel like there's enough depth to his character right now where I understand where his true motivations are. But I do like his exchanges with Moxley. Like, I like the stuff the previous week where he was kind of going at Moxley after they beat him down, and I like the post-match stuff, where he kind of sacrificed his guy 10 to Moxley, and I like that element of it, but I do think it's too soon to kind of push him into that position. You also don't know if this was the original plan, if they were concerned about scheduling. You had no idea who was going to be able to come in, when they started building this, what we knew about travel restrictions and stuff was different. So it's hard for me to determine exactly like where this plan came in. It does feel like it's kind of being rushed forward.
I just figured out we can look at the comments from people during the show. I apologize. I'm just somehow realizing this now. The one thing that match, I'll say, I don't know if this is in the comments or not, I'm just noticing the one thing that match has going for it, if it does end with a funky finish, is probably not the main event. Like, I'd be surprised if that's, to me, this is a middle of the match card, and you end with the big blow off with the elite in the inner circle. But I don't think this is a main event match.
Yeah. Jason PS3. So I didn't like Flair versus Sting at the first Clash. No, I love that one. And
I don't
that
like
was
that
free
match.
TV. It was free TV, and it made Sting a superstar. So, if someone was elevated in that match, which I really didn't feel with Omega and Okada, I kind of felt like it just kind of a way to keep the program going without beating either of them. But yeah, Sting versus Flair, I thought that was an excellent way to make a new superstar.
That's why, to me, and I love Cody Archer, like, it's a great story. I would have gone the Hogan Andre route of get those guys out of the tournament. Like, Archer could have cost Cody. Archer could have been DQ'd. And what would be a fun, like, Darby and Sammy for a title? To me, that's a missed opportunity that title match is, because Cody and Archer, they don't need the TNT title.
But I think that's the point, Justin, is that they want to make the TNT title seem like it's a big deal. And if you put it on guys who people see as mid-carders, and Darby and Sammy are really talented young guys, but the idea is that these are like, Archer is maybe not like as big of a star as Cody, but he's been protected and been positioned, and you have Jake and all that kind of stuff like that. They want to sell the idea that this title is a really big deal, and it's a bigger deal if Cody's doing it. I can see, like, because Cody can't go for the main title, I can see Cody's kind of character arc being built around this TNT championship, way we've seen, like, we saw John Cena with the US championship, Shinsuke Nakamura with the IWGP Intercontinental Championship, kind of like building the prestige of that title by having it on one of your actual top stars.
No, I agree. And then you have Darby beat that guy. someone like
they're
Darby.
teasing that Darby will one day beat Cody. They had the draw. They had like Cody kind of just narrowly beat him. He kind of like out foxed him at the end. They're kind of teasing that, and eventually one day Darby is going to beat Cody, and maybe that's a year from now. I think Archer should win the title first, and Cody chases him for it.
Well, if you look at the card, I assume Moxley keeps the title. It's Kenny and Hangman as tag champs. Like, I don't think you can have necessarily Cody as the mid-tier champ too, and you need some balance on that on both sides of the card. Tyson's a weird fit in that match. I don't know how, but I feel like Chris Jericho gets knocked out by Mike Tyson on Saturday. I don't know how he fits into that.
Oh, it's going to be Sammy gets knocked out.
That's what I was thinking.
He's going to spin around like 300 times, and he's going to like sell it great. Sammy Guevara is like the underrated like MVP of AEW as far as like everything he does. He does comedy. He has good matches. He takes these crazy bumps. He sells for all these guys. He's a great like understudy for Jericho.
And what's the surprise on Saturday? I don't know. About this.
No, like the surprise entrant.
I think it's Drew Gulak. If they want to do a surprise.
I don't know who's available. I know today Meltzer said that most of those recently released guys aren't available yet. So I'm not sure who exactly it is. I don't know. Is Gulak a good enough surprise? I think Gulak's a good wrestler, and he showed some charisma in WWE, but I don't know if he's going to be like a great surprise. I think the guy who would be the biggest surprise would be Rusev.
Yeah,
definitely. What about a Hardy turn? Is it too soon?
I don't know what his long-term character is going to be like.
I'd like to see it because this character right now isn't working for me. I think Hardy as himself is great. And himself, as a heelish Matt Hardy, I think in this empty arena environment would be more effective.
In this character, Raj, I agree. It hasn't worked yet, but if you made it into a villain and it's so over the top, like all of a sudden it's like, all right, I like this. But as the baby face, I think, and there's so many guys for him to work with too. Hardy would be an interesting fit as a heel in AEW. Easy opponent for Mox to build to with as well.
Absolutely. So next week for Saturday night's main event, that would be the October. So we went from May to October.
Yeah, would they kind of take a big jump because it's been kind of once every like 8 weeks maybe so far up until this point.
Well, that's what they used to do in the early years. Is they took the summer off. They didn't have it was like the seasons for the regular TV shows. They didn't have it, and I think the following year was the first. Or no, it was 2 years later where they started doing a summer episode. But yeah, so we're going to jump to October, and this is one of my favorite Saturday night's main events of all time that we're going to be covering, with Randy Savage becoming a full-fledged babyface and aligning with Hogan, and it was just one of the most memorable scenes from my wrestling childhood.
I could still picture it. It's also part of the music video in If You Only Knew.
Yeah,
like that scene of him going to get Elizabeth and the Hart Foundation holding him. Yeah. I mean, there's few more iconic scenes in wrestling than we're about to witness.
Justin, there's been a lot of idle chatter.
That really doesn't matter to me.
There you go.
A lot of you guys want to see me in agony.
But the measure of a man, understand.
When I first heard that song, I thought it was like a smash hit. Like, what did I know? Like,
it's like Welcome to the Jungle.
That was music. Yeah. Why don't I hear this on the radio?
Yeah, I think the Wrestling Album 2 is actually the songs are actually good.
Wrestling Album 2 is the one.
Demolition.
Wrestling Album 2 is the one with Karamia by Nikolai.
No, that was one. They had the commentary in between with Vince and Jesse between the tracks, and
why don't the three of us sing a duet? That one, yeah. Which one? What was on 2 then? Pile Driver.
2 was Pile Driver. It was called Pile Driver. Wrestling Album 2, Pile Driver.
Girls in Cars.
If You Only Knew. Because the first one is Land of a Thousand Dances that all the wrestlers do.
I think,
but yeah, Girls
I don't know what it is.
Hillbilly Jim had some love song on there that actually I liked.
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like Jim Johnson not being there anymore. I feel like the music in WWE has kind of like I don't find as many like really memorable entrance songs as I
feel like that's all of wrestling right now.
Why can't one guy sing his song? Like Shawn Michaels, when they hit "Sexy Boy," and of course you want to sing.
A lot of guys sang their songs, yeah,
but one guy can't sing his song. It's got to be a villain to a bad guy, right? We can't have one guy singing his song.
Like Jinder, have Jinder sing over his theme song.
Would be awesome.
That's a cool theme song.
Yeah.
But
I'm trying to think if anyone does sing.
Jinder would be a great fit for that.
Yeah, I can't think of anyone that sings today.
Well, like Jericho.
Even Aiden English, he was a singer, and he didn't sing his own entrance.
But I can't picture Aiden English's actual like intro music right now in my head. I just think it's just like, I don't know. I feel like I think about like when I like, again, me growing up, which would be in like the mid 2000s. I think of like Christian's entrance music, like, oh yeah, that was awesome. Just close your eyes. You know, obviously there's the Undertaker who has like famous entrance music, but like Shelton Benjamin's "Ain't No Stopping Me," like that was like, I feel like all these stuff were kind of memorable, and now it's like a lot of like generic alt rock.
Right.
Which is not to slam alternate rock, but it just kind of feels like there's less imagination put in, and it doesn't tell you that much about their characters.
Right. It's like you could say, I want that song, you know, just give me that song, or, you know, it's Bray Wyatt had, you know, cool music.
Yes. There are some exceptions. Like Nakamura has good music.
If Jinder came out to a kind of new age Rougeau Brothers theme, something goofy, campy, like it made you dislike the Rougeaus before they got in the ring. It was perfect. Right. I mean,
I
like hard on the line.
People consider me people call me a mark. I actually like AEW's entrance music a lot. I love Darby Allin's entrance music. I like Cody's. I like Kenny Omega's. I like MJF's. I love Hikaru Shida's. I find a lot of them to be like very listenable and very memorable for me.
Jesse, you know what's a really underrated song that I mean, I think we all like it. I think, but the Hart Foundation. It's called "Trouble in the Streets," I believe. Yeah. That song has lyrics, and the lyrics, believe it or not, are actually badass. Jimmy sang it for me once. I've only got I'll send it to you guys. I've got a clip of it. He does like the chorus, or like it's like a 6-second clip. But the song's perfect instrumental, right? But like when you hear the lyrics, it's like this song's cool too. So Brett and the Anvil had lyrics to that song. I don't know if anybody in the comment section knows, but
wow, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah,
but Jimmy's he's a legit music guy. Like he was a legit guy in Memphis.
American Made and Hulk Hogan in WCW.
That was a fun house show because that was a show. It was actually in Everett, Mass. The Hardys were there. The line was out the door. The gymnasium had flooded the night before. The Hardys were working with TNA or Impact at the time, and I remember doing an interview in the Hardys' office, which was literally like a curtain, and it was where they were sitting in like the gym teachers' chairs. And I think this was around the time they could have been going back to WWE, and to me, it was like they're going back. Right, they're sitting in the gym. There's like puddles of water on the floor. It's like it's the Indies. You know, you love it. But
was it the at the Everett Rec Center, like across from high school?
Yeah, it was. Good memory.
Nerlens Noel Court.
And Jimmy sang that night. Jimmy's like, "Did you ever hear this song?" And I'm like, "Oh, right, same thing." And I was like blown away. So
wow, my mind is blown. I'm gonna check it out. That's awesome. Well, Justin, guys, this was another fun week, and next week will be awesome. Justin, you got anything to plug?
The next few days are going to be busy. I'll start with that. I know tomorrow we'll have an advance preview of the Undertaker's Last Ride documentary, and Saturday there'll be stories. I think tomorrow through Wednesday, and maybe beyond. But I know Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday I'll have pieces up, which is always tricky because you want stories to have a chance to breathe in between. But there's just so much content. Tomorrow will be the review of the advanced review of the Taker documentary, the 3rd episode, which I actually think is the best one out of the 3 so far. And Saturday is a Q&A with Shawn Michaels on the Undertaker, and Shawn doesn't hold anything back and talks about his early memories of Taker up until Saudi Arabia and what made that match such a mess. The tag match at Crown Jewel in November 2018, and why Shawn doesn't regret it. So those are the next 2 days.
Very cool. And on Wrestling Inc., we got we'll also have an Undertaker review of the upcoming episode, as well as I spoke with Ric Flair today for over an hour, and it was a lot of fun. And that'll be out next week. But also this week we've got Deanna Parazzo, Matt Hardy, Chuck Liddell exclusive interviews, and a bunch of big stuff next week. Kevin Smith, the famous director.
Raj, give us a taste.
Paul Walter
What's one of the big Flair takeaways? I'm looking forward to listening.
Let's see. It was mostly positive. It'd been kind of a downer of a week, so it was just kind of fun stuff. He was telling me a story about, and he was saying he'd never told this story when he was going to wrestle Vince, and originally he wasn't supposed to wrestle when he came back. and in whatever year that was. I think it was 2001, 2002. Anyway, they finally asked him to get it back in the ring. And when it came down to it, he didn't want to do it. And he's like, man, my confidence is shot. I can't do it. And everyone's giving him a hug. He goes to hug Stephanie. Stephanie hugs him. It's like an emotional moment, he was saying. And then Stephanie just opens the door behind him for him to go out. So it was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. But it was hearing Rick tell it. It's hilarious.
Amazing that one of the all-time greats dealt with such confidence issues. Like Flair's always talking.
Same as Taker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like, what are you guys worried about? But I guess that's what made them.
Yeah, it's like two of the coolest guys ever in wrestling, and that's when you're great. I guess that's what happens. But yeah, it's crazy. And also, we were talking about Ric Flair. He signed a new WWE contract, and we had reported it last week. I didn't realize that when we reported it, it was like the day after he had just signed it. So it was pretty cool. So he's with WWE for a while.
To me, that's a big part of the Sting story, right? Like, he's got leverage now. He's got two companies that have to be interested. And if there was ever time for a Sting Undertaker match, this is it. Like, you could do a cinematic take. And it might continue to hire a stunt double and protect Sting if he doesn't get cleared medically. Like, all right, well then work around. To me, that's a SummerSlam. That's a cinematic SummerSlam type match. So
bring back Jeff Farmer.
Yeah,
bring back Jeff Farmer because he was the fake Sting.
Right?
Have him do the bumps.
NWO Sting.
Jesse, do you got something coming up this weekend?
I do. Tomorrow I have a piece. I think we talked about it offline last week, but I have a piece on pushing wrestlers under the age of 30 and kind of like the value of pushing wrestlers who are both young and pushed as being young, and kind of the difference. Here's a trivia question for you, Justin. I did the research. All right. On WWE's current active roster, I'm not counting guys who are injured, on Raw and SmackDown, male wrestlers, how many of them do you think are 28 or younger?
You asked me that question again? Male
So,
Raw
SmackDown,
roster.
yeah, SmackDown and Raw rosters, currently active, not counting injured guys. How many wrestlers do you think are under the age of 28? Like what number? 28 younger.
I'll say 13.
I'm going to say 4 because I'm expecting a low number here.
It is 4.
All right.
So it's Angel Garza, Austin Theory, Humberto Carrillo, and Otis. And then Akam and Razor are actually both 25 and 26, but they're not active currently. And that was I thought it was small, and that was a smaller number than I thought when I was doing the research. And I was like, wow, these guys are like, even guys who you think like Aleister Black, you consider like kind of like a young guy, and he's 34.
Yeah.
So it's kind of looking at that, kind of looking at like historically how they've been able to push guys, and also looking at how old the WWE audience is and the trouble they've had, getting teenagers, and teenagers naturally like to see other teenagers or people in their 20s. So it's kind of looking at that, kind of giving out some theories as to how maybe you could attract more younger viewers by pushing some younger talent.
And I wonder, Jesse. Go ahead, Raj.
I was going to say, because a lot of the biggest stars, they became superstars in their 30s. Austin, Hogan.
Yeah, it's not like I said.
I think Goldberg might
have
have
43. Yeah, Archer's 43, and he's ready now to me. Lance Archer.
Yeah, it's not a hard and fast rule.
No,
but
of course not.
It's the idea is like young people like seeing other young people, and it's not necessarily you don't necessarily have to push them to the moon, but to have them on that show. Like I'll use Cena as an example, right? What kind of got Cena over, and I think he was 26 or 27 when he first won the world title, when he became like the guy, was that his character connected with younger people because he was a younger guy and he had like a modern hip hop kind of character, and that connected with younger audiences. It certainly resonated with me as a kid and got me interested in wrestling. And I don't know if you kind of have that, even like guys like, like Akam and Razor are 25 and 26. Like, does that matter? They're not pushed like that. And on the contrast in AEW with the young guys, and Jim Ross is so good at this, is he always pushes that these guys are young. And part of the fun of being a wrestling fan is seeing someone like a young guy and then being like, oh, they're just scratching the surface of how good they're going to be. People like watching prospects in sports because of that same reason. The idea is to see the potential, not necessarily the finished product. So if you can have those guys and push them, it creates an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. Well, very cool. I need to get running here in a minute. But thank you guys, and I can't wait to do this again. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And please like us on YouTube, leave a comment, and let us know what you think. And we will see you guys back here next week. Take care.
Watching.
All right.